do you think schools and any indoor environments can be safe with any level of community transmission with this very infectious variant?
Want to go first, Bill?
Well, look, probably for the great benefit of the health of the people of Australia, I'm not a doctor or an epidemiologist. So on these questions of the, of the virus and transmission, I defer to people like Brendan Crabb and Raina McIntyre. But as a practical point, I'd say obviously as we go into autumn and winter, students are going to have to be taught indoors to some degree, and therefore the ventilation questions and standards and monitoring of those and the setting of those becomes exceptionally important. And what also becomes very important is daily reporting of data and effects and impacts, so that we know really what's going on as children come back to school. As I said, none of this is now perfect, and we're not going to have 100% safety in the schools, it seems to me. But our top epidemiologists, our top ventilation people have to be right there at the front and at the heart of the policy that's now going to be created over the next several months.
I agree, Bill. I have a colleague of mine, an old colleague named Robin Schofield, and she, when I first met her, was doing air contamination studies in Antarctica from the Northern Hemisphere. And no one I know knows more about airflow and contaminants and particles than she does. And she's done a lot of work here in Melbourne with regards to HEPA filters and recommendations for those and so forth. She's at the University of Melbourne. Why, as Bill says, that person is not front and center right in the middle of this, when most of the discussion at the moment is around exactly this problem? I mean, we know the vaccine bit, right? We know that bit. That's easy. In fact, the only problem we've got there seems to be supply. And we drop the gap between 5 to 11-year-olds down to 3 weeks in a flash if we had supply, but we don't at the moment, it would appear. So the other big piece is ventilation. And it's interesting, Bill, you mentioned in winter, but I haven't come across a single teacher that's happy with the idea of teaching on a 35-degree day with all the windows open, wearing a mask for 6 hours. I know for me, my comfort level, craps out at about 26 in the house before I'm reaching for the remote. So I think it's unreasonable to expect teachers and students to concentrate in those environments. And I realize there's been some really inappropriate commentary around, babysitting and so forth, but I think everyone realizes that's nonsense, I would hope, and that you need kids to be thinking sharp and engaged, and they're not. I grew up in the like many others, I grew up in the 70s when air conditioning in schools wasn't a thing. I remember those days. They were dreadful. You couldn't think to save your life, and we don't want to go back to that. That's not going to work. And a lot of kids are affected by hay fever and other allergens that are really detrimental. I know my son, if he's my 9-year-old, if he's at school under these conditions, he'll last about 3 hours before I get a call to go and pick him up. And teachers are the same. It's not a reasonable outcome.